Hey guys, this is Pimp here. I got another little trick for you guys. I heard about this channel on YouTube that has a lot of good analysis on it. You know, a lot of good points to be made. And fuck, I did it again. It's just Thorin's stupid YouTube channel.
A definition of the word spectacle is an event or scene regarded in terms of its visual impact. Now, I would actually probably, in the sense, a colloquial way to say that also might just say making something be an event. But the problem is, term event is even contained within the definition of spectacle. And if I say, let's make an event, people are going to think, oh, you just mean make another tournament. You mean make another league, another, whatever it might be, a cup. Esports has had events forever, right? Every land's called an event, technically. So I use the term spectacle to talk about something that was more than just a sporting match or an event that took place. It was a spectacle because, oh my God, it blew people's minds. It was so important. It stood out in time. Like, you can look before then, everyone was so hyped, excited. You can look after then, like what actually happened in the match, the tournament, whatever it might be. So you think in sports terms, okay, more recently in the UFC, we had the Conor McGregor versus Khabib Nurmagomedov, if that's indeed even how you pronounce that, Wim, title fight where obviously Khabib was undefeated and pretty much wrecked everyone he'd faced, was a wrestler, which famously was supposed to be Conor McGregor's weakness, but Conor McGregor was the king of the UFC, right? So many times he'd beaten the odds, so many times he'd done incredible things. He'd been a two-division belt holder. He'd done so many impossible things. Maybe he could win. Maybe he could still beat this unbeatable machine. Doesn't matter what happened in the fight. The spectacle, the build-up to it was immense. It was different than a UFC title fight that happens elsewhere. You had Mayweather versus Pacquiao a few years back. Obviously, two people who'd been on a collision course their whole careers, but kept dodging each other, never met. Everyone wanted to see that fight. Now, the fight itself was shit, but it did some of the biggest numbers of all time because what a spectacle. Two of the potential GOAT candidates going head-to-head, not in their primes, but at the end of their careers. Finally, they did fight. If you look at the most recent Super Bowl, you had the Rams, incredibly talent-stacked, done so well during the season. You had the Patriots, who limped into being a team that was able to make it to the Super Bowl, faced the odds time and time again, managed to make it there. Obviously, now again, doesn't matter what happened in the game. What a spectacle, right? Old Tom Brady, Bill Belichick's won so many times, but they're sort of a bit banged up. Are the Patriots, the Rams have so much talent. Who didn't want to see this? A lot of people thought this would be a dethroning of the Kings in terms of the Patriots. A lot of a team like the Rams is their time, right? Maybe they can have their own era. Didn't matter what happened in the game. The spectacle, everyone was glued to this match. Now, esports has tournaments, but spectacles in esports are just not even necessarily consistent byproducts of those tournaments. So yes, Dota 2 has the International, its biggest event, its World Championship. League of Legends has a World Championship. The majors in CSGO, you expect to be spectacles. Nowadays, we only have 2 a year. We used to have 3 a year. But you know what? All of these tournaments have times where they're not spectacles, where they're just other events. Now, they might be the biggest event of the year, but the games don't live up to it, or something goes wrong with it, or the hype isn't quite the same for it. I mean, CSGO have had times when teams were going to make roster moves right afterwards. It sort of killed some of the hype, right? So if you want to look at some of these tournaments, sure, this is talking a little bit about the build-up to them, but coming into TI4, it was a fucking terrible meta. And Chinese teams were dominating. It wasn't really that exciting a tournament, except for the crowdfunding element. Season 5 Worlds. We played the whole year. We had a fantastic summer season. And what happened? They changed the meta. You had all the Gangplank and fucking Mordekaiser and all that shite that just basically didn't ruin the tournament, but it made it something of a tournament with an asterisk for me. It wasn't as interesting to me. A lot of teams actually got invalidated from how good they'd been previously. Actually, you saw, obviously, the Chinese teams just fell apart completely. In CSGO, the Face It Major. Okay, when it got to the playoffs, not really that interesting in terms of some of the matchups. End up being crap in terms of the matchup. It hadn't been good to that point anyway. It had all sorts of problems and a lot of bad games. And then what happened in the playoffs, which is obviously our format in CSGO, single elimination, 8-team bracket, right? 7 of the 8 series ended up being 2-0 sweeps, and no one really gave a fuck. Like, everyone loved that Astralis won or gave them props, etc. But wasn't that interested in a major, right? So you know what? Keep all those circuits. I like them. They have their own benefits. They don't have to be spectacles. Some of them are sporting events. Sometimes competitive matches don't have to be the biggest event ever. But let's add a component into our circuit somewhere where you can control the excitement. You can choose to set it up so it's going to be very, very exciting for certain. You can build interest towards a specific match that you know exactly what that match is. Because at the moment, I often make the case that format dictates how likely it is that we get interesting matches in a normal tournament. And along those lines, I've often joked, if you only want to have the biggest viewers and the most excitement and the most hype and the most trash talking, what you should do is you should literally go the UFC or WWE route. And what I mean by that is you want the numbers to go crazy, just rig the matchups, as in who plays who. Like in the UFC, if you're a really good team, but you're not really a player in that context, but you're not really a good draw as a fighter, and you've got a boring style, you have to beat more people till you get that title shot. If you're incredibly dynamic and you're knocking people out and submitting them and everyone's behind you and the hype is insane, yeah, like Ngannou, you get boosted straight to the top, mate. You go straight up to fight the best people. That makes sense because it's not just about the sport, it's about making money as well. It's about creating a spectacle that people want to buy tickets for, right? That's actually a big aspect of what you're doing here. I mean, I used to joke, if you want to go fully only make money, just do WWE. Literally pick the matches. Don't even have a sporting component to it. I mean, I've often commented, if you could let me pick the playoffs of the tournament, listen, it wouldn't be fair, but you know what? I'd make you some fucking amazing matchups. I'd make you games that either were like incredibly close, or they were like rivalries of people who left teams and other teams, or there was like historical context there, or maybe I'd make one really unfair. Like I'd take a really strong team and I'd say, this is the one team you can never beat. You've got to play them in the first round now. Let's see what the fuck you can do against them, right? Are you just going to pussy out again? Well, you can't do that in the finals time. You've got to play in the quarters. Now, the point here is, yes, that wouldn't have true competitive integrity. The UFC route is more closer to a sport. And that's why I said don't get rid of the circuit. I want the circuit for esports. That is legit. That is how I think it should be. But this is how we can make mega bucks. This is how we can have a match that transcends CSGO and goes into all of esports and transcends that and goes into sports and has the whole world watching, but just for that one match. They're not going to watch every tournament in the group stage and a minor tournament and then build up through the major qualifier, which is now week one of the major. No, they just have to watch this one match and then watch the next one match in this series, and they've got this spectacle and there's something they can latch onto and keep following. Because I'm going to use CSGO as my primary example. That's the point of this video, really. We've got past the point where you can really outline all the games. People just remove them for the subreddit. So let's talk then about CSGO here. Let's imagine we had a UFC-style circuit, and initially we'll only start with a championship, right? So we're going to start with a championship belt, so make up the name, the World Counter-Strike Champion, have a title, so-and-so company's World Counter-Strike Champion. You have a real belt, or you have a special trophy, or you have a badge that whoever's the current holder has, and they literally hold that thing, they go around the world with it, they can show it off, etc. And then what you do is, initially, we can't have a champion, right? It'd be stupid to just give Astralis the belt. So what you'd probably do now is you'd have Astralis fight the initial championship match against Team Liquid, or, I mean, it's up to you who you want, right? ENCE, Na'Vi, Renegades. I'd personally pick Team Liquid. I think the most interesting. Whoever wins that is then the champion of this belt, right? The winner of that match then faces the next contender. So at the moment, I would pick ENCE, or I'd pick Na'Vi with Simple, or I'd pick maybe Renegades after this tournament of Star Series. I've seen they looked amazing. Whoever the challenger is perceived to be, mixed with how good the matchup is. Like I said, just like in the UFC/WWE, you don't necessarily just put someone up there just because they've won enough matches. Sometimes they have to win more if they're not interesting to counteract the sporting element, counteracting making the money and making the spectacle. So if someone isn't that good, you don't have to pair them versus number 2 necessarily. You can have that other person fight number 4, and then if they do really, really well there, maybe then eventually they get their title shot, right? I mean, in line with that, I mean, when I made the suggestion on Twitter, Dost actually said as a follow-up, similar thinking, extended the concept. What you do for the contender is maybe have a contender fight like they do in the UFC. So maybe if this tournament, it's Astralis versus Team Liquid for this belt, then the contender match on the undercard is Na'Vi versus ENCE, and whoever wins that is the next contender for whoever wins. They either play Team Liquid or they play Astralis, and they contend for the belt next. Likewise, maybe Astralis loses, just giving you a hypothetical here, they go down, right, okay, if they fight in the next couple of fights, like, I don't know if they'd go straight to the contender match, maybe you wait until they win a couple of tournaments, then they come back and they play a contender match against Renegades, and whoever wins that one's the next one going for the title. This would be a really, really cool way to do this. I even think personally, like I said there, I would use other big tournaments to determine the contender. So maybe I even say, after I have my championships, I have it now, I say, right, whoever wins the next DreamHack Masters event, they're the next contender. That's even a cool extra storyline I've added to someone else's tournament. I'm drawing in their excitement and hype to build into mine. That adds an extra significance. As soon as that tournament's going, you're going to go, oh, wait, that means they fight against Astralis or Team Liquid, whoever it is, in the final of the next championship belt, right? One of the ways I would make this very exciting, aside from the fact that I determine the match when I make it fire and I'm crowning a world champion, is I would make the prize purse really top heavy. So everyone gets prize money, first place and second place. And I would have a big prize purse. So let's say the prize purse is $300,000, $400,000, because you might think, that, how can you manage that with only one match and one day? I'm going to make the costs super low and I'm going to make the hype so big for this event. We're going to build into it. I'd probably make it pay-per-view, quite frankly. And I think it'd be possible, if you built it up the way I think about it, to make much more than you make from current LAN events, or at least go similar and have a much easier logistical time pulling it all off. So I would make, let's say you have a $300,000 prize purse. Okay, you know what? 75-25 split. The winner gets 75% of that kind of prize money for most of it. So the incentive to win is massive. And if you lose, yeah, you get something. You didn't win the belt and you don't win most of the prize money. You definitely don't get half. You definitely don't get anywhere close to the champions. Because I want it not just to be about being the world champion, but about going absolutely crazy to try and win this match. That's what's going to make this so exciting, along with the hype we're going to build for it. I'd also add in stuff like have bonuses like they do in the UFC. So obviously MVP, maybe he gets $20,000. If you sweep the series and don't lose a map, maybe you get, as a team, an extra $50,000. If you win the opponent's map pick, maybe you get $5,000, $10,000. Add in these incentives to incentivize amazing matches. I think personally, obviously since we're having one match, you make it a best of 5. People build into it, they practice for it, they know who they're playing, so they practice all the maps, they get prepared on them, they have the anti-strats. I'd even add in a wrinkle. I think this is what would make it cool, because I want it to be a unique format. 2 ways I want to do it. Either, you know what, just go gangster, say no bans. The 7 maps, you pick the one maps you want, wherever 2 maps are left, just aren't played. Now, fuck the strategy of like determining what you're going to play and getting your strong map out there to even up the series. If you can't handle me on my map, guess what? You don't win my map. I'll win the belt. I'll win the money. Sorry. Go play in another tournament, mate. Or if you want to make it a little bit more of a compromise towards what we have now, but still with some of that excitement, have it where there's no ban initially. You pick your first map. So if I'm the best in the world on Dust 2, you can't ban me out. I picked Dust 2. Then you have one ban after the first map. So now you can ban out my second best map if you want. So if I am only a 2-map trick team, I'm not going to win the best of 5 most likely, but I at least get to play my best map. And even if you're Astralis, if I'm Team Liquid and I might be the best on Dust 2, I at least get to play Dust 2. I mean, in this scenario, they obviously do when they veto against Astralis, but the point is here, Astralis couldn't take Dust 2 out. So I can at least show off that, and as a result, guess what? If the best team in the world can play their best map, and Astralis can play Nuke every time, you're also going to get an incredibly big spectacle, because people are going to know you can't avoid them on that map. You're going to see the best team in the world play that map, and you've got to deal with that. You've got to handle that if you want to win the tournament. I think that's even more sick. Then, because we have a specific match, and we know what the match is weeks in advance, this changes the whole content creation team, for the game rather. For the team doing the tournament, as in the people behind it, the tournament organisers, they can build into this for weeks. They can start out with initial hype and articles and a video series. They can do one of those like boxing UFC does, like an embedded or a 24/7 series behind the scenes, following the teams and the players, getting ready for it, little interview segments with them, release it week by week by week to tease people, to get them really excited for it, and then get them to buy the pay-per-view and they're going to go crazy. It's not just like a normal match. You can't have that for the tournament finals of an IEM, because you don't know who's going to be in the final until a day before the final usually, right? So you can't do any of that stuff that allows you to build it up, and was what really creates the hype, which is why people buy pay-per-views for the UFC. For esports events, I understand why. It's a bit potluck and you're not going to pay for it, at least at this point in time. Then you've got to look at the fact. In this kind of a scenario, one thing I think would be cool is this would be so easy for traditional media to follow. They know what the concept of a boxing heavyweight title match is. They know about just latching onto the one big fight and not covering every fight on the undercard, or that people only care about the big names. Because here's a key thing, is Yes, you want it to be a great sport in Counter-Strike. You want it to be an esport. You want it to be competitive integrity and a great format, and you want to crown the true champion. But you know what? Ultimately, you want to entertain, and entertaining is what's going to be most likely to make you money. So if we want that, we need some of the traditional media to get interested, and this would be a particular way. They can just follow Team Liquid versus Australis. There's so many storylines there. They don't have to know about all the rest of it. It wouldn't replace the current circuit. It would be something additional and extra. It would be easier for fans to follow. There's one match to watch here. You don't have to watch a whole tournament. You don't have to know where all the teams are at. You don't have to do all this. If you go to the venue, you're watching one match. It's a couple of hours of your life. You're not in a venue for 10-hour days, which never made sense, by the way, in the context of how sports venues are. You're only supposed to be there for a few hours to watch a sporting event. How do you have 3 meals a day in a venue? How do you go outside? Some of them don't let you go have re-entry. All sorts of problems in our current setup that wouldn't be the problem in this particular case. Then you go and look at the costs. The costs is where one of the areas where this kills it. Because not only could we do the pay-per-view element, if it makes sense, but look at the logistics and costs. You only have to give prize money to 2 teams. You only have to give flight and accommodation to 2 teams. You only have to have a venue for 1 day, and you get a lot of bang for your buck in terms of the prestige, the spectacle, the potential outside interest. And as I say, maybe even if you have a pay-per-view component, the raw income that you make versus a normal event, which currently isn't monetized to the same degree. So this is one of these areas where you've got to think a bit outside the box, and it doesn't have to replace anything. But if someone could nail a format like this, I think it would work in all esports games, but in CSGO, what an incredibly exciting prospect that would be, especially giving the teams time to practice into that great match. And then let's see who the best is. This video was supported by Dean Tanglis, Andreas Snazore Westerlund, James Harding, NateDOhDoubleG, OllieJ, Tobias Bernasconi, Travis Greb, Tristan Jones, Daniel Olivar, Jiangheng Lu, and special thanks, as always, goes out to Jerky's Minion, one of my OGs. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Maybe you want to ask me a question. I have a monthly AMA. Perhaps you want teasers for who the next guests are on my upcoming talk shows. Maybe you want to be part of my monthly discussion where my top patrons talk to me. Well, put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today at the description box link for Patreon.